Now let's change the text color of the H1 and the H3. Right now it's that dark default Bootstrap color. We'll go in here. And we could do H1 color white and H3 color white and refresh. And we get white text just like that. What we could also do though is combine these two because they're identical and do H1 comma H3, and that will make both of those white. Whenever we have a comma, it just selects different groups. So all H1s, all H3s, and it looks exactly the same. But we can even simplify this more and just assign everything in the body to be color white. And you might think that would be a problem. It might change our button, it might change our nav bar, but remember that those are more specific. We have classes from Bootstrap that are doing that. Versus these are just plain H1s and H3s. They don't have any classes or IDs, and they're easier to override with their own styles. By setting the body color to white, the H1 and the H3 inherited that color, and everything else did as well. It was just overridden. So if we inspected, let's say, this button, and we take a look when we select it, and you see that color is set to this color 333 by the class button default. But if we keep scrolling down, you'll see that the body right here is set color to white, and it just happens to be crossed off. All right, so again, that sets both of them to be white. Now let's work on the font size. So our H1, we want it to be bolded, which it's currently not. So that needs to be bold. And I want it to be 5 EMs, which is 5 times bigger, remember, than the parent element. So we'll select H1 and we'll give it a font weight of 700, which is how we use the bold. Refresh. You can see it's bolded now. Let's also make it much larger. So font size 5 EM. Now go back. And there we go. So that's looking closer now. This ratio between the H1 and the H3 looks exactly the same. We don't need to do anything to the H3. Let's now get the image to behave the way that we want it to. And to do that, I'm going to show you something that we haven't seen before. I'm going to move the dock to the right side. And if I inspect the HTML element or the body, you'll see that both of them stop before the end of the page. So about right here. That's the end of the HTML document. So when I tell my image to cover the body, and I set its background size to be cover and background position to be center, it takes into account the size of the body. And when the body ends right here, it behaves differently. What we'll do to fix this is we'll give the HTML element a height of 100%, which means take up 100% of the container, which is just the entire document window. HTML height 100%. And we'll go back. Let's make it full screen now and refresh. And our image works the way that we expect it to. And I shrink down, and that looks good to me too. Now we have two main things left to focus on. The first one is the HR. It's way too wide for us. It's supposed to be a lot smaller. And then I also want to focus on the font here. We'll start by getting the HR to work, and all we want to do is give it a width of 400 pixels. So in our CSS, we'll select HR, do it at the bottom. Width is 400 pixels. There we go. Another thing that I'll do that's a little bit sneaky that you may not have noticed is I'm going to go in here and give it a border on top, 1 pixel solid, and then I have a color here, which is F8, 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 and then a border bottom as well, which is 1 pixel solid, and this will be a transparent color, 0, 0, 0, 0.2. So this will give it the effect of a shadow. So pay attention, it's really hard to see. I don't even know if that will pick up on the screencast. But what we have is a border, and then right below the border, a light gray line that makes it look like there's a slight shadow. It shows up a little bit better over the lighter colors. Okay, so if you can't see that, you'll have to trust me, or you can get rid of the background image and it will be easier to see there as well. Next, let's focus on the icons, which I used Font Awesome for. So I have it open, fontawesome.io, and we'll just get the CDN here as well. If you click on Get Started, there's a CDN that you can just copy there, put that in our application. You can also just do that up top, save, and then we'll take a look at the actual icons. And the first one that I know that we used is a paw. And to do it, all we need is I class equals fa dash paw. So I put that inside the button. So if we go to the button right before get started, I added that in. Now if we go back and refresh, you can see we have that little button there and we have a paw print. Next, we have two icons here for sign up and log in. And those two, I remember what they are, so I'm just going to do that here next to sign up. After we write sign up, we're going to add in another icon, except this time class is not fa-paw, but fa-user-plus, which gives us that icon with the plus sign. And login is the same thing without the plus, so fa-user. And we have those two icons. There's one other thing that I did that you may not have noticed, which is the text shadow. So there's a shadow around all of the text here. You can see it there, you can see it over here. It's around the H1 and the H3. And text shadow is something we can set with CSS, text-shadow. And there's kind of a lot of pieces to it. So you can see here, we're setting the offset X, the offset Y, so how far away from the words should the shadow go. Then we're also setting the radius of that blur, so basically how thick should it be, and then the color. And the shadow that I'm using is a little bit complicated. There's a lot of pieces, so I'm going to go and type it one piece at a time in the CSS file. So inside of the content div, we'll add text-shadow, and then the first one we'll do 0 pixels, 4 pixels, 3 pixels, and I'll make it really obvious to start by making it red. And if I refresh, there's the shadow that we're adding first. Now I'll go and add the second one with a comma and indent a little bit. And then we want 0 pixels, 8 pixels, 13 pixels, and then I'll do orange here. You can take a look at that one. You can see we have this more blurred one underneath that's bright orange. And then there's a third shadow, which is 0 pixels, which remember this first number is the X offset, and then the Y offset, 18 pixels, and then 23 pixels is the blur radius, and we'll make this one yellow. And you can see we have the bright red, tighter shadow, and then the orange one that's a little bit further away, and then the yellow one that is a lot more blurred and a lot whiter. So we want to change those colors. We don't want to be working with that. So the colors are a little bit less exciting. The first one, RGBA 0000 0.4. The next one, very similar. Instead of 0.4, it's 0.1. And then one more, that's also 0.1. So using RGBA, we're just setting different shades of gray. And there we go. So much less exciting, but hopefully you can still see it here. It's a lot more subtle, but it just adds a little bit of depth to the page. Great, so that's all we needed to do. Let me go back and just wrap a few things up. The big point I want to make here is that we can use Bootstrap and rely on it, but we're not relying on all of its styles. So yes, we kept the navbar the same, although in the last video I showed you how you can change the navbar color, but we changed the fonts, we added background images, so we really just use Bootstrap as the underlying foundation, and then we add in all the styles on top. And it didn't take much, but I think we made something that looks relatively respectable with just a few lines of code. And let's be honest, half of all of that is from this one text shadow line right there. Awesome. So we made this site. Looks relatively good. We're done with Bootstrap for now. We're then moving on to JavaScript in the next unit, which is really exciting. We will be moving away from creating sites and things that look nice for a little bit, just so that we can focus purely on JavaScript. But then we'll bring everything back together and make some beautiful sites that actually do things, that don't just look nice. So that's coming up soon. Hopefully you enjoyed Bootstrap, enjoyed this unit. And as always, I recommend that you download the code if you have any questions. It's in the description of this video. All right, I'll see you in the next unit.